live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, more sleepless than ever. Live and in living color on this Wednesday evening. Steve Pulaski behind the microphone. Got Joe Viso, got Dominic Guanzon. And yeah, this is a day when running on empty really feels like it, okay? Got to see, this week was very exciting. Got to see my lovely girlfriend, Catherine, graduate her fire science program, which was awesome to see. It entailed a lot of driving. I want to say I probably put another 550 miles on my car this week alone. Like, it was a ton of driving through this wonderful Hawkeye state known as Iowa. So I feel like I've seen every nook and cranny of this state now, but well worth it. Big congratulations to her. Very beautiful ceremony last night and just very cool to see her in her cap and gown and everything. It was at the actual, this graduation was at the Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines. That's where the Iowa Wolves play, the NBA G League team. As well as the Iowa Wild hockey team. So it was pretty cool. They had all the names of each graduate on the Jumbotron when their name was called. It was nice. Really cool. It was a really sweet venue. Yeah, so it was fun. It was definitely fun, kind of a midweek jaunt here. And yeah, I am going to crash as soon as this show is over because I am exhausted today, to say the very least. But well worth it. Big congratulations to my girlfriend, Catherine, though. It's definitely doing major things in that field. But got you guys with me tonight. We are actually kind of doing a spillover show from last week because we didn't get to the review of Evil Dead Rise last week. There was just so much to unpack with the writer's strike happening. There was just a ton to talk about with that. So we are going to dive into that movie to end the show. And then we, of course, got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to touch on today as well. So we got Marvel and a little bit of horror movie goodness today. Back-to-back review show on Sleepless with Steve. First things first, my two lovely co-hosts. The show wouldn't be anything without you. Joe, how's your week moving?
I'm also running on empty here. I got home at 6, which was literally 32 minutes ago to be exact. I'm still in my work uniform and everything, wearing my dress shirt, dress pants, dress shoes, all that stuff. So I can't wait for this show to be done either because I want to get all these clothes off. I want to lay in my bed, and I just want to go to sleep. That's all. I just want to put on pajamas and pass out. So I'm right there with you, Steve. Dom, how about you, man?
Tomorrow I have the day off. And then Saturday I am working 6 to 6, baby.
Oof.
But that's okay. I get to go to the city tomorrow. I'm trying to enjoy it more and more.
Oh man, 12-hour day on Saturday, huh?
It's part of the job, so.
That it is. Yeah, it's been busy over here as well. I'm actually kind of excited because this weekend I really don't have anything outside of movies. I really don't have much going on. There's Hypnotic. It's coming out this weekend, so looking forward to that, the new Robert Rodriguez movie. There's this animated movie called Rally Road Racers. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to see it. And then tomorrow I'm seeing the big George Foreman movie that I missed from a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to check that one out. That's a new Affirm Films movie. Big George Foreman. Don't ask me the full title of it because the full title's like 13 words long. It's like the miraculous story of the once and future heavyweight champion or something like that. Yeah. I don't know, but it's like longer than a lifespan. But I'm seeing those 3 movies. Also, I'm also going to watch, too, it's on Apple TV this week, the Michael J. Fox documentary, Still. So I'm gonna check that one out as well. So there's a lot of new movies, which is good because it keeps me busy. Not gonna watch that book club madness, whatever that's supposed to be. That
You're
book
not
club
watch
next.
Go to Venice?
The book club next chapter. I saw the trailer for that a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, do they even read in this thing? Do they even read? Like, I didn't see a book. I didn't see a book in the trailer. I don't recall seeing a book in the trailer. I'm like, they don't even read in this one. They're going on like some sabbatical or something. I have no idea. I didn't see the first one, but yeah, that's out. And then Fast 10 Your Seatbelts. That's what I'm calling it. Fast 10 Your Seatbelts is coming out next Friday too. I know Joe's pumped. You know, the only 2 movies that are going to make any money this month are Guardians 3 and Fast 10. So
as it should.
Easy here. Easy here. Well, one of them is great. One of them is actually great. I can't TBD on Fast 10, but we can talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I guess we can seg into that really quick right now. We can touch on James Gunn's conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And man, did this thing leave us with a lot to chew on, a lot to talk about. It was a lot to digest with this movie, and I got to give credit to Marvel for the marketing of this movie, mainly because we approached release date, and I really had no clear idea what this movie was going to be. I didn't look into it. But just on the very few trailers I saw, they did a really good job of not giving anything away. I thought the posters were all great for this movie too.
Yeah.
And I thought that the marketing for this thing, I think if you want to chime in, Joe, I think the marketing for this movie was outstanding and just how it left a lot to the imagination.
It's the Since You've Been Gone trailer is probably one of my favorite trailers this year because I think it just serves what you just need to know about this movie. They're all back. It's one last ride. The caption, "Time to Face the Music," was perfect, and like that's all I needed. I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, I don't need to see anything else. You guys have me right there. These are probably my favorite characters that are left right now in this franchise of Marvel's cinematic universe. So like I thought the trailers were great. I love all the posters. Yeah, I've always loved the posters. In fact, I didn't grab it for the show, but I own, and I'm gonna own this one as well. I own both vinyls of the soundtracks to these movies. I own the deluxe editions. I have them framed to where like you have the record coming out of the box, so you can see it, and you can see like the cool like colors and cosmic look it has on the record, and then you can see the art inside of it as well, inside the picture frame. But it's because I'm gonna be, I moved into this room and all this other stuff. It's still boxed up, but I'm eventually gonna do it with the other one. Like I wasn't crazy about the second film. I think it's all right. But I love the soundtrack to all three of these movies. That it's just like I want to own it on vinyl, and I also love the amount of art that goes into the deluxe editions of them.
Yeah, those vinyls or the soundtracks are great. I've only seen a little bit of the vinyls. I've seen photos of them. I haven't seen them in person, but they look sharp too.
Yeah.
And it without fail now, it's 3 movies in a row. Every time a Guardians of the Galaxy movie comes out, you know what song comes back in my rotation? "Come and Get Your Love" by Redbone. "Come and Get Your Love" by Redbone. I love that. I love that song. And I can still vividly remember the opening sequence of the first movie.
Yeah.
When that song drops. I mean. But all the Guardians movies have had fantastic music. This one's no exception. We can dive into that in a little bit. But just, I guess, for starters, I didn't think about this until watching Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But, man, we came very close to this movie not being directed or written by James Gunn. We came very close to this thing being like the rise of Skywalker for Marvel over here, I think. Because, like, not only would that conclusion not have been worthy of what a fairly strong trilogy this has been, but at the end of the day, I think Gunn did this trilogy so well, even with my mixed thoughts on the second film aside, he did this trilogy so well that it's going to be hard for anybody to reboot it and touch it again.
Yeah.
Now, they will, don't get me wrong, especially now with the way Marvel is going to progress. It's going to be interesting because the next couple Marvel movies you got the Marvels, which is the Captain Marvel sequel. You have the Thunderbolts, whatever the hell that's supposed to be. Captain America, New World Order. You're having, it's a lot of different stuff for Marvel now that like, and now they don't really have like their pillar franchise like Iron Man or Spider-Man or Guardians like this. Who knows? Maybe in 5 years or sooner we'll actually get a Guardians reboot. But I pity anybody who tries to tackle it, especially after this one. Because this is the way I described this in my review at stevepulaski.com. This movie's intense. Volume 3. This is emotionally stirring. And it's ultimately very satisfying on a lot of different levels. And mainly, I think one of the main reasons this movie works as well as it does is that it doesn't opt for fan service and it doesn't opt to remix the previous movies. What this movie does is really skirt that and prioritize storytelling above everything else. And I think that's the key to this movie's really strong success overall, on top of a lot of different things. There's a lot of different ways we can go with this. I'll throw it over to you, Dom. You've been the quietest of the three so far. General thoughts, general impressions, or which direction do you want to take our review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Well, it just really can't be stated just how much of a effect the first of the three did have, just overall. Just that soundtrack is extremely iconic to the point where it almost seems like a no-brainer. It's like, oh yeah, let's just stuff all this like 60s and 70s these songs into like a fun action-packed thing, which obviously is not the first one to do that, but it seemed to hit like just that perfect fever pitch of all that in one cohesive package, and one very entertaining, one very good package in the first film. That it just felt like it was being copied in, derivatively and in parts in everything that was coming out afterwards for the next several years. I mean, my God, the first one came out in 2014. This is a 9-year project. Second one, 2017. Yep. And then, of course, probably the third one would have come out sooner if it weren't for COVID. But yeah, this is a damn good conclusion to this trilogy. And you're right, Steve. You hit exactly what I was going to say, which is that it doesn't remix. It does a little bit, but in ways that are bittersweet, and in ways that are even to our cynical hearts sometimes. We can be a little cynical on this show. Even for us, hits us pretty damn well. So I think we're lockstep on that. So I'll just pass it to Joe, really.
Okay. Whew.
Are we 3 for 3?
Dude, of course we're 3 for 3. You should know me by now. I'm just gonna flat out say it. I love this movie. This hit everything I wanted to see in the conclusion to this trilogy of characters. I loved the 2014 film. It reminds me of everything goofy, sci-fi related 70s, 80s stuff that my dad showed me that he grew up with, Flash Gordon, stuff like that. It gave me the same feeling that I had walking out of Star Wars as a kid for the first time, except this movie was actually good compared to Attack of the Clones. So I was like, damn, like there's a new space, like to take probably the most D-list catalog of characters and practically make them household names is an accomplishment of itself. And you could have just left it at that first film. And let's just say the sequels were not made by Gunn, but it would have been like, but that 2014 Guardians movie, that was something. And then you have its sequel, and like, if you want to know, like I'm fairly like where Steve's at. I don't know what Steve's rating was for it, but for me, depending on which day I wake up, and sometimes I'll rewatch it, it will be either a 2.5 or 3-star film for me. I still think it's solid, and it has some really great moments in it. But a lot of the comedy in that movie is what makes it fall short compared to the first one. And I think some of the plots are a bit like nothing's really kind of happening. That being said, it's still like one of the most enjoyable Marvel movies to look at visually, because I think James Gunn has a great idea when it comes to production design, and that also shows here in Volume 3 as well. James Gunn's look in this film, his sci-fi look of just like that, like I was saying, that weird 70s cosmic look, he nails it here. There's a really cool scene where they're on like a ship that's made of flesh, and like the exterior of the ship looks really cool and detailed, really grossly, and the interior of the ship is a really fun set they get to play with. A lot of the sets in this movie are really cool. I love this neighborhood they go to that you've seen in the trailers and everything. I love what they've done with Nowhere in terms of making it like a Guardians headquarters. I think it's really cool. Dude, but that all being said, this film to me, let's look back at the last movie that we reviewed from Marvel. It was Quantumania. And I gave it 2 stars. And the longer I thought about that movie, I was like, you know what? Maybe that movie's 1.5 for me. Because the more and more I kept thinking about it, I was just like, I think I gave it 2 because it was like Jonathan Majors was really good. And I'm not going to take that away from him despite the controversy. But it's like, it really just came down to, I like Paul Rudd's performance and Jonathan Majors. There wasn't anything else I liked about that movie, really. Everything else was just okay to just like, what the hell is going on? So to go from a trilogy conclusion of Quantumania, and if that is the last Ant-Man film, who knows? But I'm just gonna take it as is. That's the last Ant-Man film. To Guardians 3, it is like I want to grab Kevin Feige and anybody else in the room and go, this is how you do it. This is how we wrap stuff up, or this is how we make a sequel.
This is how we do it. Just add that in there. Oh, dude,
new volume mix.
New volume 4, all black cast, new Jack Swing soundtrack. Hell yes. I'm not even joking. That would slap.
This movie to me, it has a lot going on in it, for better or for worse. Some critiques I'll give later, but it has a lot to wrap up, and I would say 99% of what it wraps up, it does it flawlessly, near perfect, at times too. I love what they did with these characters from beginning to end, and I'm talking beginning 2014 to this moment right here in this film. I think I had an emotional ride with this film. I haven't had that since Logan, where like I felt like a conclusion to these characters. And like when we watch these comic book movies, my friends like, and everything, we like, there's emotional moments where people cry in the theater. Everybody's seen No Way Home, and if you haven't, I'm about to spoil something, but Aunt May's death, very emotional moment. A death usually gets tears going and gets you emotional and everything. But there are moments in this film that do not require a death. It's just literally dialogue between characters and just moments of just pure happiness that like actually made me tear up at times and actually made me go, oh my god, this is one of the best comic book movies I've seen since Logan and Spider-Verse. Now, I mean, there's been stuff I've enjoyed since then, Black Panther, Spider-Man No Way Home, stuff like that, and I had a fun time. But to me, like, those were fun comic book movies. They like, to me, they were like that comic book movie that I love to watch and see. Infinity War, Endgame, all that stuff, whatever. This to me, though, as Steve was saying, and I'll pass it off because I know I'm pretty long here. This to me, it focused on stories and characters first, like Steve was saying, rather than fan service, rather than worrying about what's the next chapter we have to set up, rather than, okay, who else can we bring in from the cinematic universe? No, it's the Guardian story. It's not even about them really saving the universe this time around like it was with the previous two movies. It's about saving a friend, and you can relate to that on so many levels. And I saw this with my group of friends on Friday night, and just walking out of the theater, and like throughout the whole time we've been keeping up with these characters. We've always compared ourselves to characters and everything, and whatnot. And it really felt like, for me emotionally, it really felt like, goddamn, like it is like watching a mischief group of friends like trying to like, almost like go visit a friend in the hospital or something, and just like the road trip along the way to go do that almost. I'm trying not to spoil like what really happens in it, because like Steve said, they kept a lot hidden in this movie. And I would just leave it at that. I will let the other guys take it from there.
I'll add on to that. I said in my review that this movie could have really been called the Miseducation of Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah.
Because the story is deeply indebted to Rocket, and it's really about sort of humanizing Rocket and his plight, and really what he's gone through as a talking raccoon. And I thought it was interesting too. I saw this review on Letterboxd. I wish I wrote down the name, but I can't think of it at the top of my head. I didn't write it down. But it was basically somebody who's kind of giving context to the Rocket Raccoon character. I guess over the course of 30 years, Rocket Raccoon only appeared in like 10 Marvel comics.
Yeah.
As like a cast off, side character, barely a side character. I mean, this was like, and this isn't like 10 series. These are 10 individual issues that he appeared in over the course of 30 years. And it was James Gunn who went and made Rocket Raccoon an instrumental part to the Guardians lore. He's one of the mascots. He really is the mascot, and probably the second most popular character behind Star-Lord in general for the whole series. So the movie intimately focuses on him, even though a good part of the movie is spent with him incapacitated.
Or flashbacks too, like.
It's the flashbacks. There's really two concurrent storylines happening. It is the past that's flashbacks related to Rocket, and that show his upbringing, which consisted of animal experiments, being the subject of High Evolutionary, played by Chuoki Iwuju, and High Evolutionary conducting all these experiments on him as a young rodent. And the other half is the Guardians trying to save Rocket Raccoon's life by deactivating the kill switch that is inside of him. So you have two concurrent storylines here, and I think for starters, just structurally speaking, Gunn handles it brilliantly.
Yeah.
The momentum of both stories, the gravity of both stories, and those flashbacks. I mean, it's worth noting those flashbacks are probably some of the darkest Marvel's ever done.
It definitely taps into James Gunn's horror from his early roots with something like Slither, or even his dark writing with something like Super, where like there are moments during those flashbacks where it's just like it's very disturbing, both just like what you're seeing and just the implications of it too. Actually one of the best comparisons I heard was from Double Toasted, where this is like Sid from Toy Story, but with animals.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's some dark moments in this thing. Like, there's some really sad moments too. And this thing starts immediately, like on a somber note. So, like, it really loans itself to this sort of darker edge, which is a typical of these Guardians movies, which have been some of the more lighthearted ones of the MCU.
I love the opening to this movie because the soundtracks to these movies, and while they are needle drops that I've been complaining throughout this year, and even this movie to an extent has that going for it as well. But these movies do have something where it's like that first film, the whole point of that soundtrack is Peter Quill is still attached to his mother and he can't let it go. That's what the soundtrack is actually like in value to that. The second film, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, is actually mainly the storyline of Peter Quill and his dad. This movie starts off with Radiohead's Creep. And I know you're thinking like, wait a minute, like that's not like 70s or 80s. Like how the hell did they get that music? If you've been keeping up with these movies, you'll know how. There's a zoom that he gets at the end of the second film from Yondu and stuff. But to open up with Creep, I think is actually a really good idea because if one is a perfect song for someone like Rocket, but it's also a great song to set the tone and mood of the film, as well as the other Guardians, because they're not all perfect people. All of them have had something that like they've been critiqued on and everything. And even like I rewatched all the films leading up to this point. And in Volume 2, Mantis brings up how, like, there are parts of each of you that you hate. Like, you know, like, there's something inside of all of you that you guys are hate and disgusted by. And Volume 3 is very much them confronting that stuff and overcoming it to become the best versions of themselves together.
Extremely well said. And you mentioned, too, all the other Guardians have their own problems, and they're all back here, too, as well. Dave Bautista's Drax. You have Mantis, Nebula, and you have Gamora returning. Now, if you remember, Gamora was killed by Thanos, but she is back in this movie. It's like an alternate dimension version of her, which is a big curveball for the Guardian series, too, because this Gamora has no recollection of being a part of the Guardians.
Yeah.
So as a result, this Gamora has no romantic connection to Peter Quill, which definitely has this dark cloud cast over everything too. Like there's not even the romance angle to lighten this either. There's this contentiousness between Peter Quill and Gamora, and the new Gamora now rather, that is that really, again, like kind of prevents us from having that sort of like soft landing of the romance to back it up. Without that, like there is a very, very strong gloominess throughout this entire movie.
This is that Gamora you hear in the first volume where they're like, she's the daughter of Thanos, she's a killer, this is that version of Gamora that, like, you know, we start to see her get, you know, won over by Quill throughout that film. This is a version where she's completely like not interested at all, and you see like how dangerous she actually can be.
I appreciate what they do with her character in particular and how that resolves.
Yeah,
because where everyone resolves it's about half and half on where you think it would be. And I'm actually glad that they had the balls to be like, hey, we're not gonna reset here at the end of the day. We're gonna actually progress, and things are gonna happen, and you're gonna deal with it. And we do.
I was gonna say I really like that. Like, they let the consequences of what's happened previously throughout these films not reset, like you're saying. They play it out, and what they do with it in the end, I thought was, wow, that probably would have had that's, to me, that actually has more of an impact than what I thought was gonna happen.
Did you guys catch too? This is totally unrelated to what we've been talking about, but I was just glancing over at my review again. I figured I'd make mention of it. Did you guys catch that the voice of the talking dog, one of the new characters in this, Cosmo, the voice of Cosmo is Maria Bakalova from Borat's subsequent movie film?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I thought that was funny to note.
What's
Linda
funny?
Linda Cardellini's also a voice in this too.
What's funny
That's
is,
so random.
with the holiday special, I was like, all right, Cosmo was kind of just thrown in there. Like, I just didn't feel it being natural at all, and it made me worried about this film. It's like, all right, she's in it again. To me, she gets a better introduction in this film, and they use her much more effectively, I think, in this film than they did in the holiday special.
Sylvester Stallone's also in this too,
That's true,
but I
yeah.
confess,
Yeah.
but I confessed I liked him more as King Shark in Gunn's Suicide Squad. God, we need some. King Shark needs his own story like Rockets. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna lie. I was the only person watching this thinking that King Shark deserved this. He deserved the miseducation of King Shark. But
Hey, we'll get it.
no,
one day.
the thing about this movie though is, again, I know like we've been talking about it, and there is like a darkness to this movie, and there is a sadness too. There is a lot of humor baked in to this movie too, but it's commendable, I think, that Gunn went the direction he did tonally with this, to really give something that was definitely more emotional than we've seen with these characters before. It's been lighthearted, but it's been very enjoyable up until this point. With this movie though, it is definitely darker, and you feel that too, and then you really kind of almost realize how you've come to care about these characters. What did we think about, just generally speaking, the direction, the tonality of this thing? I'll start with you, Dom.
Oh, it's incredibly dark. There was animal abuse up the wazoo, to the point where people are asking like, hey, should I watch this? Because like there's a lot of animal abuse. And in my opinion, especially after watching Evil Dead Rise, which we'll get to, it's nothing. But
we trained you.
But it is rough. It is rough. So if you're of the faint of heart, they don't really show all that much. It's more so the implication and like the after effects of everything. So if you're worried about that, don't worry about it. You'll probably cry, but you'll be okay. But yeah, it's really dark. The fact that Star-Lord has like depression throughout this whole friggin' movie is astounding. It's like, wow, you took like what's supposed to be like effectively the Andy Dwyer, literally, of this whole series, of this whole group, and just made him really depressed. And they all have post-traumatic stress disorder, but particularly him, after losing his the love of his life. That one hit hard. And of course, Rocket. I'm just shocked that they centered the whole thing around, not the whole thing, but they centered so much around Rocket and his flashbacks. But that just owes it to you to be in I guess if one of your characters has a past with the antagonist, if your protagonist has a past, you focus, you hone in on that. And James Gunn usually has a good habit about doing that. Even with I think the Suicide Squad. I'm failing to think of exactly how, but I feel like that also applies there too. But yeah, it's really dark.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe with Peacemaker more, not from the Suicide Squad, but his show. They definitely do a little bit of that. But yeah, are you done, Dom?
Yeah.
Kind of going off what you said too. I mean, in terms of the darkness of it, I always felt like these movies got darker and darker with each. I mean, this one takes the biggest leap by far. The first one, I mean, like starts off and Peter Quill's mom passes away from cancer. It's a really dark way to start a movie that then transitions to Chris Pratt dancing to "Come and Get Your Love," and just like it kind of deals with that. There's some stuff that's like brought up that like Drax literally watched his family die in front of him. They say stuff like that throughout the film and everything. The second film deals with Peter coming to terms with like his father and what kind of monster he turned out to be and everything. That's about as dark as that movie gets. But like even like where that goes is pretty messed up, as well as the Gamora and Nebula stuff, where that kind of goes into what Thanos did to them as children and broke their bond as sisters. Really, this one though, yeah, with everything Rocket related, it's definitely the most dark this franchise has been, mainly because yeah, the implications of what you're seeing. I mean, God, the first time Rocket, like, you know, he starts out as a raccoon, a baby raccoon, and then the first word that comes out of his mouth is hurt, and it's just like, oh my God, I can't watch this. So yeah, man. I mean, if you're an animal lover, or if you know you're bringing your little kids, which I did have a little kid in my theater at the 8 o'clock showtime, and you best believe it, at one of the scenes, he was crying his ass off, and they had to take him out of the theater, and I don't think they came back inside, which is unfortunate to the parents because they both were loving this film, so they have to go back and see it again sometime, or just wait till Disney Plus releases it. Yeah, man, it's definitely the darkest of what you said, and like to kind of go with like with Star-Lord, that character, I really like what they did with this character in this movie too, because like to me I know you said he's like kind of like the Andy Dwyer of it. I've always kind of equate that to Drax more, which is really weird because Drax to me was more reserved in the first film, and then the second film, it's like he's completely a loose cannon when it comes to comedy, and especially in the Avengers movies that he appears in. This movie, Drax is more reserved and everything, but going back to Star-Lord, I really like the growth this character has had, and to give kudos to all the performances in this movie. But Chris Pratt, I really like what they've done with his character. How he's kind of become like, you know, the loser, like space cowboy, to eventually like this, like almost like, hey, like he is kind of like space Indiana Jones almost. Like he's really badass in this role. There were times throughout this movie I was like, dude, you know what? This really is his role, man. He owns Star-Lord. I'm really digging it. As somebody who's played like the Guardians of the Galaxy video game that came out recently, and what they did with that character and made him like punkish, kind of after what James Gunn has done, it's like, damn, like this might be the best version of that character, because I look at the comic iterations of him. I've never read the comics, but I was always interested in checking it out, and he's more military and police-based focused, and it's just like, now what James Gunn and Pratt have done with this character have made him like that space cowboy is way more cooler. And kudos to him to having that F-bomb in this movie, because it was perfect.
Yeah, first Marvel F-bomb, too, in this movie as well. And it's so inconsequential.
Yeah.
It's so inconsequential.
It floats so naturally, too. Like, it was like, oh, that was perfect.
It's just wild, though. I thought about it after it happened. I'm not going to give spoilers as to context or anything like that, but I just thought after it happened, I'm like, really, man, like 38, 39 movies, whatever it is, and like this is the time that they thought, like, nah, it's time to drop it. No, but it's worth noting, too, like, the whole animal experiment scenes have caused not really a controversy, but some debate online, like, well, you know, with this being a very hard PG-13,
Yeah.
I just think it's valid to remind people that like no, this movie shouldn't have been rated R. The PG-13 rating was created for movies like this.
Exactly.
I think this was more of just a reminder for parents that like these movies are not meant for 5 and 6
Exactly,
year olds.
yes.
They're really not. Like, I would say 9 to 10 is like the entry point for these movies, but these are not kid movies necessarily. And I don't think they've been kid movies for quite a while.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, especially the Guardians movies too, which have kind of had,
They
knowing
had a
Gunn,
little edge to
have,
it compared to
have
other
had
movies.
like a little bit of an R-rated light, like an R-rated light edge to them that the other Marvel movies generally haven't. I mean, outside of Deadpool, which is hard R, but that's just it with Guardians, though, is that like it's one of those movies that has a little bit more edge to it, and you saw it here in terms of the scenes with the animal experiments and everything like that, that are dark, but definitely give a lot of weight to the movie, I think, in general, and the character of Rocket as well. Like, I loved how we got a lot of humanization towards him in his life.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't chime in earlier when you brought it up, but I will go and say though that like the Radiohead's "Creep" though sets the perfect tone for this thing through and through.
Yeah. Intermission?
Yeah, okay, I just want to say real quick, I've always loved Marvel's interpretation of like sci-fi, not sci-fi, the wider universe.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, hey, this is a person, they're just gold. And it's like that shouldn't work, but it kind of does. And it's somehow really refreshing and original. And it's like, oh yeah, there's a random human here. Hey, Nathan Fillion. It's just playing a dude, like a person, a human, and is just there. And you don't need to know why, but they're kind of just scattered throughout the universe. And there's something really, it's a little like Star Wars in the sense that like, hey, there's a trillion species in the galaxy, and you don't need to know every single one's backstory, but you just buy it. You just buy it because they've set the bar kind of low in the sense that, yeah, everyone's just kind of like, half of the universe is humanoid, just a different skin color. And then from there, you can do anything. So they've run the gamut from here to here, and it just somehow really clicks. And if you look at the poster of Volume 3, it's like, what is this smattering of like species and people and things, right? You've got a tree, a raccoon, a dog, a bug lady, and it's like,
when you say it like that, it is kind of strange.
Yeah, it is strange, but it just works really, really well in a way that doesn't make your eyes roll or roll over, at least aesthetically. I think they did start to roll over later on, but I'll get to that later.
That's what we call a tease. We'll be back with Zooms after our Zoom sponsored intermission. Talk more about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Definitely another point or two I would like to make before we go into final thoughts on it, because we do have back-to-back reviews. We will also get to Evil Dead Rise, chat about that, and hear how many nightmares Dominic has had since he has seen Evil Dead Rise. So we will dive into all of that coming up here on Sleepless with Steve. It's Wednesday night. It's Sleepless night. We're live and in living color, and we'll be back in about 60 to 90 seconds after the Zoom sponsored intermission with more Sleepless with Steve. We are live and we are back with Sleepless with Steve after our Zoom sponsored intermission, talking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And going back, I think we would all agree, even though I think we have mixed opinions on the Volume 2, at least I do, I think that we would agree this is one of, if not the strongest of the Marvel trilogies, or at least the trilogies within the cinematic universe.
Yeah.
I would say Spider-Man is still my favorite. I would put Spider-Man as my favorite, but this is a very close second. Just the strength of the individual installments, I don't think can be overstated, at least in the regards of Volume 1 and Volume 3. But I think that these movies, maybe more speaking as a collective, but also just reining in on how good Volume 3 is, I think that that Marvel as a whole could learn a thing or two about Gunn's approach, because each of these Guardians movies have been mostly contained to the core group of characters, which is very nice. And as a consumer and a lover and a viewer of movies, is also very refreshing. It's very refreshing to get a movie that's about the characters that the movie's named after. It's not concerned setting up different plot threads and how is this going to play into the Kang dynasty and how is this going to impact other installments down the road. Gunn was able to make each of these movies just stand alone within the larger universe.
Yeah.
You don't need to watch 3 Disney Plus series as a prerequisite. You don't need to. It just works and it's contained. And they gave Gunn, he's working still within the Marvel blueprint, obviously, but they undoubtedly afforded him the kind of creative control that nobody else has gotten directing any project for them.
Even if you didn't watch the holiday special, you're fine. Like, you didn't, like, that's not even needed here either. There's like one little Easter egg joke at the very end that's like, oh, if you didn't see it, you wouldn't get why that's happening. But it's like, other than that, like, like I said, they introduced Cosmo, I think, better in this movie than they did in the holiday special.
Any thoughts to add on that, Dom? I just liked how this thing was just so self-contained.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, for being kind of the sprawling 2.5-hour epic that it is, it's you kind of just go into it, because that's kind of what it was like for the first movie, where it's like you had absolutely no establishment. But yeah, it surprisingly holds together. But I think if I can segue into like my main criticism of the movie, which is that I don't even know how to articulate this other than, at some point, did you guys just kind of like glaze over like 2 hours in, or was that just me?
What do you
Not
mean
for
by
like the rest of the movie, but like just like, oh my God, there's so much happening here. That maybe I just had an off day yesterday. But it was just, I don't know if it was, the rhythm of the whole thing was too monotonous for me. Not that the movie was monotonous. I'm talking about the rhythm, if you understand what I'm trying to say. And again, it's not like, oh, I completely checked out for the rest of the movie. No. But at some point I was like, oh, damn, I'm here watching a movie and with no outside provocation. Maybe it was too overstimulating for my puny brain. But can you guys see where I'm going with that at all? Because I don't.
I got one thing, and I can kind of get you on when you said rhythm. Like I said, I love this movie. I think it's almost flawlessly. But I said I love 99% of what this movie did. It's 1% is the amount of characters in this movie is a lot.
That might be it.
And a lot of them are handled really well. I think the main core group, the Guardians, they are handled perfectly. If you're not a Guardian, Adam Warlock in this movie, who has been teased by James Gunn for so long, he was teased at the end of Guardians 2, he could have been taken out of this movie and nothing would have changed. I really, like, as I was sitting there, and by the time the movie wrapped up, I'm like, he did one thing at the end of the movie that was the most impact he had on the plot. Because he shows up and he just blows shit up and then leaves. And every time, that's all of his scenes. And, man, look, I get it, like, it's James Gunn's character, he wrote it like this, but we got another Marvel character who's just kind of a doofus, and I get it, he was literally born, like, a few, like, days or weeks prior to the events of this film, whatever, like, the time length is, months, maybe, I don't know, because they do say, like, he's actually, like, even though he's in an adult body, he's actually, like, 8 years old in there or whatever, so whatever that whole thing was, I think as a character, it's like he just kind of feels shoved in there, including the, as Don was saying, the gold people, their leader, who I forgot the actress's name that plays them, and the character as well. If you've seen Volume 2, you know who I'm talking about. She's in this movie. The High Evolutionary, who I think is a fun villain. And like
of that type of villain,
yes.
I think that is the perfect thing you could do with that villain, where they go with it and how that actor's going with it. That is the perfect way to do it.
Because
if you're going like full psychotic,
I've seen people be like, oh man, like what, we can't have villains anymore that like are just full psychotics. Like, no, yeah, we can. It's just there were times where it's like it kind of reminded me, and this might come off as a bad comparison to people, but with the amount of yelling he was doing, it brought me back to X-Men Apocalypse at times. So I was like, can someone shut his ass up? Like, because I'm fine with a villain being completely psychotic. It's why I like Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. He's just crazy. That's literally just it. He's just crazy. And I think I can't pronounce this guy's name, but he was in Peacemaker as well, and he plays the High Evolutionary here. I think he does a good job. Yeah, I'm not gonna take that away from him. It's a very
Chukwudi Iwiji is how you say it.
I'm not gonna try to repeat that, but if you need to go to reference, remember this timestamp right here. I think he does a really good job. It's just like I do feel like there's so many characters. Like I mean, even Cosmo and Kraglin, who are part of the Guardians, but it's just like again, there's those characters. Stallone comes back from his character that he was in 2 and everything, and it's just like, damn, there's a lot of fucking characters in this movie, man. That like the rhythm of it as we're like cutting, because this is the thing, and I think Dom, it might be why. You're with the Guardians the entire time throughout this movie, and the only time you're not with them is during Rocket's flashbacks, but those are very intense moments that you're just drawn to the screen. Near the end of the movie, they start splitting up and going on to, and like on a certain planet, they start splitting up, and there's a lot of jumping, not only between the Guardians, but the side characters as well, and what they're doing throughout all this, like building up to the climax of the film. And during that moment, that was the only low I had, and it made me realize, like, shit, there's too many characters in this movie because they were jumping around so much.
It's a lot. I mean, I will say I stayed in tune with this better than a lot of recent Marvel movies that I have seen.
Same.
I stayed in tune with this pretty well. Like every Marvel movie, though, it ends with a huge where everything goes boom, and it's a lot of cross-cutting, and it's a big action finale. I get that, and it is quite a lot of time spent with this thing because it is, again, like we said, it is 2.5 hours. But I think I thought it mostly used its time pretty wisely. I didn't feel like it lingered too long on particular elements. It is just a lot of characters, too. I mean, just the Guardians alone is a huge ensemble to begin with. And then you bring in, then the time it takes to humanize Rocket's friends during the flashbacks and stuff. You have Rocket's friends. You obviously have the High Evolutionary. Then when they go to Counter Earth, too, when they go to Counter Earth and they start interacting on that planet, it is a lot. It is definitely of an epic, a movie of epic proportions, but I didn't feel lost at any time where I have in other Marvel movies. And I think that also just adheres to the fact that this movie is very well contained.
Yeah, I didn't get lost. I did not get lost. I just had an not out of body, but an out of moment experience where it's like, oh shit, yeah, okay, this is
it's
this
like you
is
were
happening.
so involved in the movie, and then you realize, oh, I'm just watching a movie. Like it was just like you were really invested, and it took you out for a second.
Yeah, I can't even remember where it was. I think it was like several minutes before the No Sleep Till Brooklyn thing. And then when that went on, I was like, oh yeah, like Super Mario Brothers. Where it's like, that is just the most overplayed song. No, I will say this. I will say this.
The same exact thing.
I will say this. Like 1,000 times better to use it in that sequence, that awesome sequence, in this movie, Guardians movie, than in the Mario Brothers movie, where it's just so on the nose. It took me out of it.
This gave me a badass hallway fight. The Mario movie was just like, we gotta get to
that Brooklyn. Was good. That was a good hallway fight.
We want to go into final star ratings with this because I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And again, I made this announcement in my review at stevepulaski.com, but this will be the last Marvel movie I see, at least for the foreseeable future, the last I will see in review. Mainly because it comes down to this point, nothing really else interests me. Like, usually for the rest of this particular phase. And I've thought about this for a while, and I've kind of looked at Guardians 3 as like my potential jumping off point, and emerging from this as satisfied, as riveted, and as really emotionally struck as I was. I feel like it is an ideal jumping off point, at least for myself. I'm not saying I'm never going to review another Marvel movie again, but they're no longer a priority, at least for me. And I think having been committed to like 30 plus installments of this massive franchise up until this point, I do think that was already a commitment of mine in itself. But I will say I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I think it's one of the best superhero movies I've seen in a while. Maybe since No Way Home, it might be. It might be my favorite Marvel movie since No Way Home. And it really, I guess it also reminded me too how much I have grown to like really love these Guardians characters and really love to spending time with them, and like oddly enough caring about them in a very sentimental manner as well. So I give it 3.5 out of 4 stars, a very strong 3.5 out of 4 stars. Just a very enjoyable time at the movies, even with even despite some sad elements to this thing. We'll go Joe and then Dom for final thoughts on Guardians 3.
I'll do this quickly because I know we got Evil Dead to touch on still. Like I've been saying it the entire time, I love this movie, and if you would have asked me what you think my first 4-star movie review would have been this year, I would have said like, ain't no fucking way it's gonna be Volume 3 of Guardians. I mean, like, I'm just like, I'm a little like, Marvel fatigued. Even though I go see these movies, it's just like, all right, everything. No, dude, I gotta say, it is a 4-star movie. Is it a 4-star movie in the terms of how like fucking The Northman was 4 stars for me? No, not even close. But
I always said not all 4 stars are created equal.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, because my one friend who yelled at me for giving Dune 3 stars on the show and then Jungle Cruise the same rating, I'm like, you just don't understand how that is in terms
Context.
of ratings. This to me is like a 4-star, kind of similar to how Maverick was 4 stars, like a blockbuster 4-star movie, like in terms of emotions and like how invested I was in everything in it. I haven't felt this way. I mean, like, since I know Steve said No Way Home, and like I totally get what you mean by that. For me though, in terms of like this level of comic book movie, it hasn't been this way for me since Spider-Verse and hell, even Logan. I love this. I thought it was great. This is probably it's probably my favorite trilogy or second favorite trilogy. Either the Spider-Man movies or Cat movies would either be first or second. I don't know. I haven't had time to think about that kind of stuff because I've been thinking about how much I've loved this movie and what they did with it. So for me, it's 4 stars.
Dom, send us home on Guardians 3.
Oh man, I should not have been the one to send you guys off. But I was toying with a 3, but looking back on it now and in the wider context of Marvel, which is the whole point of Marvel these days in cinema. But I say it crosses just over into 3.5 out of 4 stars for me, just because it's a great send-off for a series really truly made out of nothing.
Yeah.
Like Joe said, D-list, E-list characters that no one cared about before. That's how original it feels. You don't even know it's coming from a template as opposed to, a Superman or a Captain America, movie. So for that, I give it props. And for continuing to evolve, even that second one, I might be the least harsh between us 3 about it. I really enjoyed the second one, and here coming out of that, I do struggle if it's just overall Marvel fatigue or just James Gunn fatigue, because he does this almost too perfectly, almost too well. I might like the Suicide Squad more than Guardians 3, just in how it handles violence and the more ambiguous morality of that, but regardless, 3.5. I'll say 3.5.
There you have it, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, our review in the books. This will probably be a quicker review, too, just because of time constraints to begin with, number one, and also just this movie isn't as substantive, I guess you could say, as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but it's worth talking about, and it probably gave Dom nightmares for several days, so I didn't want to not talk about it, at least in some capacity. Evil Dead Rise. We were supposed to review this on the show last week, but due to our discussion about the WGA strike, we did postpone it. I thought it was wise to postpone it and wind up just devoting the show to the strike itself. So we are coming back to talk about Evil Dead Rise. I will say I haven't watched the Ash versus Evil Dead series. I don't know. Have you, Joe?
I started the first season, finished it. I'm on season 2 of it right now.
Yeah, I've never watched it, so I can't comment on those, but I've seen all the movies. And I will say, I guess to start, in a landscape polluted and populated by excessive horror sequels, that over the last 40 years, Evil Dead's been pretty conservative. It's only in film number 5 in the whole series, and all of which have had Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell's fingerprints on them in some capacity. They served as producers on this one, which is directed by Lee Cronin. And I did not go back. I watched the first three again. I did not go back and watch the remake again, which or the reboot rather in 2013. I'd like to go back and watch that again, the Fede Alvarez movie. But I will say this Evil Dead Rise, I will say this is probably because the Evil Dead movies have always been famous for incorporating some sort of like comedy or some sort of humor or lightheartedness or wackiness into the premise. Not this one. This one is not very comedic whatsoever. This movie is dark. And this movie is really like 96 paralyzing minutes of watching a loved one succumb to a demon, just in time for Mother's Day too, because it is the mother who does succumb to the demon in this movie. I said this and Beau is Afraid would be a wonderful Mother's Day pairing. And this one, though, Evil Dead Rise really focuses on Alyssa Sutherland's character, Ellie, who's the mother to three kids and gets overtaken by this demon. The bulk of the movie takes place in the apartment complex in which it occurs, in which the possession occurs once the Book of the Dead is read aloud. And a lot of it is just nasty, gruesome violence, but done extremely well by Lee Cronin and the legion of costume designers and video effects people, because that's really what this movie is. This movie is essentially a production of grotesqueness, of blood and gore and violence and carnage. And it does quite well. And I really was also taken by Alyssa Sutherland's performance. I thought Alyssa Sutherland does a hell of a job with a performance that's very physical and very nonlinear. I thought there was a lot to like about this thing. I wasn't like I wasn't jumping for joy to see this thing. I thought the trailers were very generic, but now having seen the movie, the trailers were really well done in that regard because they did not give away a ton. Because I remember I saw the trailer so much that I was just like, this doesn't really strike me much as an Evil Dead movie, and it doesn't look much different than overall possession movies. Well, that's just the trailer for a reason, and I'm really glad the direction they took with this. But having all said that, I already published a review on this. I want to know Dom's opinion on this damn thing. I want to know. I had to delay it a week to get your thoughts on this because, as famously the recurring joke on Sleepless with Steve, you are not a horror movie fan, Dom. How did you stomach Evil Dead Rise, and what were your general thoughts on it?
I'm not a horror guy, but I have seen the first Evil Dead. And then I think I remember watching Army of Darkness as a kid, because I watched Evil Dead in like college and then Army of Darkness as like a kid. And I think going into Evil Dead Rise, that's what I was thinking of. Army of Darkness. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We're gonna get some shots of like demons doing backflips off of trampolines just off outside of the screen while Ash is just doing like rapid fire shots from a repeater as a la the ending of Army of Darkness. Yeah, no, that wasn't this. This is the kind of horror that I really don't enjoy all that much. But I will respect the art of it. It is the thing that kills me the most is the body horror. The thing that really disturbs me the most, and I do have respect for it, is the body horror. Dude, out of all the incredibly horrible things that happen to these characters and the things that happen here, the worst thing was a goddamn cheese grater. Like, Jesus Christ, that thing has become kind of a small meme.
I audibly retched when that
for good reason. Scene. Like, there's a creature in here where it's like it's the fusion of like three people and like they fuse to become this amorphous bug thing, and that was like nothing. I'm like, who hasn't seen that before?
That's just not a Tuesday in my world.
Yeah, for real. But like someone swallowing glass in practically slow motion in this like pornographic close up of like their throat. That's like. It's the things that theoretically someone could do that is because like Human Centipede is funny to me. Partially because of the South Park episode Cent iPad is just eternally funny to me. So that stuff is whatever. At some point blood becomes like funny.
Yeah.
Where it's like, where I think they recreate, was it The Shining? Yeah.
They do, yeah.
It's
They
like
pay homage to
the
it, yeah.
hallway full of blood kind of thing, where they just kind of copy that, which is very effective, but also like it wasn't funny, but it's like, oh yeah, cool, that's a cool shot because it's just so unbelievable. And but it's the shit like that makes me really disturbed, and I do respect it for making me squirm very, very, very much. Yeah, I'll just hand it off there. This is the kind of horror that it's not, if we're running the gambit between Scream on one spectrum, which is like slasher, and then we're all going to the World's Fair, which is 1000% psychological. And then you've kind of got
Kills.
Evil Dead. You've got Evil Dead like 60% of the way to World's Fair.
Oh, I thought you were doing another
65.
comparison. Okay, sorry.
Oh, so were we gonna? What did you say?
I thought you were making like a third comparison. Like you have World's Fair, Scream, and then something like Halloween Kills, where it's like just carnage.
Yeah, Halloween Kills. I think I would say that's like 35% of the way there. I'm being very ambiguous with these numbers.
Okay.
Because it's a more serious take as opposed to Scream, which is like a fun Scooby-Doo esque thing where it's like, hey, let's stab Chad 20 times and he survives. Or like a character named Chad. But yeah, I'll just leave it right there. It made me squirm. I didn't enjoy it. If they make more of these things, which apparently they are, I don't even know if I'll want to see it, but I do respect it for making me squirm, for disturbing me, and respect. Kudos. If you're gonna go this route, this is how you do it, which is just full on. Yeah. What if we unleashed a demon into the world? There's kind of no rules here. More or less, it's just kind of infecting people, or I should say possessing people, and it has a whole, because it's otherworldly, it's another dimension, it's a whole other spiritual thing. So yeah, full that, and I respect it.
Joe, your thoughts on Evil Dead Rise?
This is if the light could not glare, it's Evil Dead 2. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely I absolutely love how goofy it is. I like it more than the first film. I think it's leagues ahead of the first original film that Raimi made, and I think it's better than Army of Darkness as well. Because I think it just does I think it does the best job of balancing the humor and the horror element in this film. Even though it is more humorous, the horror elements in this movie I really enjoy. So when it got rebooted in 2013, I was like, oh, they're gonna make it more serious. Let's see how it goes. And I walked out and I said, you know what, a serious Evil Dead movie, that has potential. 2013 reboot did a pretty decent job with it. I enjoyed it. But I want to see it done better. Like, I'm not saying 2013 movie is bad. I like it. But I really want to see where they can go with it in terms of, like, the idea of, like, yeah, a family member being possessed and gruesomely doing stuff to their body and others. And that's what Evil Dead Rise is. It definitely, it's more performance driven than I think the 2013 movie. Because to me, 2013's Evil Dead was very much spectacle driven on the amount of blood on screen you're going to see. Because I think it still holds the record for the most blood in a horror film. And for good reason, because the practical effects in that movie are insanely good. And the climax of that movie uses a ton of blood. Evil Dead Rise pulls back on that in terms of just the blood, because the gruesomeness is still there. As Dom was saying, there's a cheese grater scene that made me, and then there's also some glass that is swallowed that made me also do that same reaction. There's a really cool shot that freaked me the hell out, involving like the eye of like a door, whatever that thing is called, of it, like any apartment building you've been to, and just you seeing
like
what's
the peephole. Yeah,
the peephole. Thank you. Where you're seeing through that peephole, happening to the people outside of this apartment. Like in the hallway, that was a good shot. Yeah. I was like, holy shit, this is messed up. Because most of the time you watch these movies, and this one included in the TV show, and someone gets brutally murdered in these, but then like Ash walks into the room, he says a one-liner, and he's like, ha ha, boomstick, bam, and then like decapitates something, goes groovy, and then leaves the scene, and everybody stands up and applauds because that's what Evil Dead is to some people. But to some other people, they're like, wait, there's potential here with, the Book of the Dead, all this other stuff that you can do something with. And I think the director here, Lee Cronin, saw that potential and really ran with it in the best way possible. This was a really entertaining film. It's a really cool fucking horror film to see this year, especially coming off the year of horror that we had last year. It was like, hey, look, it's still going strong, man. And I love the performances from both Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, and then Maribel Pease, I think is how you pronounce her name. Maribai Pease as Teresa. There are two sisters in the film, and the connection they have there, I think, is done really well. And the children in this movie, most children in horror movies, they usually don't work. All three kids in this movie, I actually really liked. Thought they were all like well behaved and everything.
Even the one that sets the whole thing off.
Even the one that sets the whole, because the one that sets the whole thing off, like, there is that curiosity and everything. And I even like, look, as a kid, I would have been like, oh man, what the hell is this stuff and everything. It's the remorse that kid shows afterwards and the conclusion to his character that made me go, okay, that's way better compared to the 2013 version where it's like an adult, and I'm just like, bro, you know better than this. Like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, having it be a kid that sets the whole thing into motion too is like, it's forgivable, but also even sadder.
Yeah, because it's not like it does like. What happens to that character is like, oh shit, like, you know, look, yeah, I mean, he did set this off, but what he's going through right now in terms of seeing what's happened to his family and ultimately what's going to happen to, like, you know, his sister and everything and whatnot, it's like nobody deserves that.
Yeah, and I say that this movie does evoke something larger as a whole than I think a lot of the previous Evil Dead movies did. I'm not saying it's better, but I'd say it's different in this way too. Is like there's a real helpless feeling of watching someone you love like descend into madness here. That's really sad. Like, and there's no Ash. There's no like superhuman person like Ash to come and can defeat any creature that he's faced with.
Yeah.
Like, it's really just these innocent kids, and it's darker and it's a little bit more devious in that way too. Yeah. I guess depending on the depth of your trauma is how you're going to respond to this thing. But I liked it a lot. I thought that it was gnarly. I thought that it was nasty. I think it's a fun movie to see with an audience too. I was genuinely impressed by this for a movie that I like I said, the trailers did not lead me to have very high expectations, but I defend those trailers now for not giving a lot of this movie away, which I thought was is tough to do because there's a lot of really good moments in this thing, but they really kept it under wraps pretty significantly throughout. So I was damn impressed by this movie all in all. Anything else that you would like to add, specifically you, Dom?
It's relentless. It's horrifying. No one's safe. No, absolutely no one is safe. There's a sequence where it's like, oh, the extended cast of characters, how are they gonna? Because you got a feeling they're gonna go, but it's like, you know, at what pace? No, just one scene, just a mass slaughter of all these characters, and that's pretty sick. So I'll give it that. Yeah, are we going in the final ratings here? Because
that's what I was thinking.
For me, my thing is that 3 out of 4 stars, because as an art, it is very effective. As a piece of horror, it is extremely effective. It is revolting, and it does disturb me, gets under my skin. I guess my only thing is, like, this might even be a question to you guys. Is there like a reason for the characters dying? Is there much behind that? Is there an arc? Is there an arc for many of these characters? There are for, I want to say, the leads. For the others, does there need to be? Maybe not. But for me, I think I was like looking into more of that. I don't know. I should probably have given more time to extrapolate on that point. But for me, definitely a solid 3 out of 4 stars. I respect it.
I'm sorry, Steve. Can I go next? My bad.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of going off of you, Dom. Like, you know, I mean, the whole thing is there points to these characters dying and everything. I think it's more of like, again, it's Lee Cronin playing with the idea of this franchise, because it's just like anybody that usually died in these Evil Dead movies, especially this one right here, had it coming to them. Where it's like this one,
which I'm cool. Those are my favorite. Where it's like, yeah, these are all assholes. I don't care. Kill them all.
Very carnal in that way.
Yeah. Like, this movie is more like, okay, like, you know, oh, are they gonna have an arc by the end of the film, like, because they'll make it out, and some of them don't. and that's just it. And
it's really
just, like,
sad.
it's really sad, and it's just like to actually just kind of do this 180 with the franchise and do it as good as you did. It's like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, like, in terms, totally see what you're seeing. Like, you know, it's like, is there an arc there? But it's like, I don't know if Lee Cronin was playing with the mindset of, but usually this franchise would do something like that. And I kind of want to do a different spin with it, with my version of it. And it's just like, it's not like a total spin. It's just like, hey, that's it. Like, this family got screwed. This demon literally screwed with them. There's no Ash here to save them. So this is what's going to happen.
It's a tragic story.
It is.
It's a tragic story in the universe. And I'm okay with it. I'm totally cool with it.
No, yeah.
It doesn't kill the movie for me. Because totally... the arcs that mattered most, like the 2 arcs, I guess you could even say, maybe. Definitely the main character. That's the one that mattered most, and it delivered handsomely.
Yeah. I would just say, I mean, also this movie has one of the coolest opening shots to a horror film, a title card reveal, I should say.
Yeah, that was actually a great shot.
that shit was awesome. The only criticism I really had with it was I wish we spent more time with the characters, honestly, because I mean, like, I do kind of agree with.
It was a cool exposition.
It was an exposition that was really done really well and everything. I wish we spent more time with the family a bit, because I know we have to get to the carnage because that's an Evil Dead movie at the end of the day. Because like this movie does keep at least like 3 identities of Evil Dead throughout it, and if you know the franchise, you'll see them as you're watching this film. But it's like, damn, I actually would have loved to spend more time with the family as a whole before shit went down. Other than that, though, I had a fun time with this movie. I actually did not come up with my star rating. I think maybe I'll give it also a very solid, enthusiastic 3 stars.
It's 3 stars for me too. I'm glad you mentioned that title card because I was going to mention it, and if nobody else did. But yeah, no, I love the different tone of this compared to the other ones. And having just watched the 3 movies again, the first 3 at least, leading up to this movie, the stark contrast in tone stands out like a sore thumb with this one. And it's meaner. It feels meaner. It feels but it also feels artful still too. I think that the aesthetics on display here are really good, a lot of which was practical too. A lot of it was fake blood, and a lot of it was makeup too. I've seen some behind the scenes photos of Alyssa Sutherland getting fitted and everything for like the costumes and the makeup. Just all around, just a genuinely impressive display of a very disgusting, carnal, and downright revolting brutality and gruesomeness that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think the only thing that would have been better is if it would have come out in October.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know why. This would have been absolutely perfect for it.
We got Saw 10 for you in October.
And the Exorcist sequel.
Yeah, or I was just gonna say, yeah, David Gordon Green's Exorcist is coming too, isn't it? Yeah.
Saw X.
Yeah, so we got horror movies on the horizon. It's not the season for it yet, but it will be soon. But that was our 2 for a Sleepless with Steve tonight. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Evil Dead Rise. Next week on the show, what are we talking about next week? I just blanked here.
The Death of Dick Long.
The Death of Dick Long, indeed. The Death of Dick Long. We got that coming up on Wednesday of next week. I knew it was something different. I knew it was something awful.
I don't think anything's coming out this weekend, right? It's just, this is my weekend to catch up on Beau is Afraid. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of smaller movies out this weekend, but I think we can do The Death of Dick Long too because of the fact that that's the one movie made by one of the Daniels. I think Daniel is it Daniel Scheinert?
I think so.
I think it's him that I haven't seen yet. So I am very curious to see this one. So we will tackle that come Wednesday. Looking forward to it. Other than that, that's going to do it for Sleepless with Steve tonight. Really good show tonight. Appreciate you gentlemen being a part of it as always. And next week, again, The Death of Dick Long. I love saying that title. This is going to be
a great name.
This is such a wild card movie. I have no idea what to expect, and I hope it leads to a good discussion. So we will find that out on Wednesday. Highlights of this show will be on the YouTube channel on which you're watching this, as well as some of our extended coverage of the Writers Guild strike. That is already posted up on this YouTube channel as well. In the meantime, we will see you next Wednesday. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.